the leader of a major organised crime group and four associates responsible for distributing huge quantities of Class A drugs across the northeast of the country have been jailed. Sean Monaghan, 45, of no fixed abode, previously pleaded guilty to his role in running a criminal network that supplied multi-kilo quantities of cocaine, heroin and amphetamine to drug dealers and possessed dangerous weapons. His associates Bryn Bowden, James White, James Ramshaw and Stephen Graham, who also pleaded guilty to their charges, were sentenced alongside him at Newcastle Crown Court. The prosecution showed that in 2020, the organised crime group used EncroChat, an encrypted criminal communications network, which has since been dismantled by law enforcement, to coordinate their activities. Expert analysts revealed they purchased over 51 kilograms of cocaine, 19 kilograms of heroin, and 200 kilograms of amphetamine for onward supply. The case was investigated by Northumbria Police as part of a wider Operation Venetic, the National Crime Agency investigation into the EncroChat users. In April 2020, police executed search warrants at several addresses in Newcastle, recovering 2 semi-automatic handguns, 2 semi-automatic rifles, a hand grenade, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition, along with 2.5 kilograms of cocaine. Evidence showed these weapons were being stored on behalf of Monaghan and were available for use in criminal enterprises. The investigation revealed the group collected huge amounts of cash from customers, with approximately 1.3 million sent to just one supplier during a 1-month period in April 2020. Monaghan coordinated the collection of cash and the payments to his suppliers using a team of subordinates who acted as couriers and storemen. Industrial quantities of the drugs were distributed by the group not only across the northeast but across the UK using stash vehicles with hidden compartments. Monaghan fled the UK in June 2020 and was eventually detained in Istanbul, Turkey, and deported to the UK. A further associate, Simon Lancaster, described as Monaghan's trusted lieutenant, was detained in the United Arab Emirates and later Oman pending extradition. However, before the conclusion of the formal process, he opted to voluntarily return to the UK in July 2025. As well as being sentenced for the drugs and firearms offences, Monaghan also sentenced for conspiracy to inflict GBH from a separate investigation. Sean Monaghan was sentenced to 27 years in jail. Bryn Bowden, 28, of West Farm Avenue, Long Benton, was sentenced to 7 years in jail. James White, 45, of Orchard Drive, New Biggin, Hall, was sentenced to 6 years in jail. James Ramshaw, 41, of Hambleton Court, Ashington, was sentenced to 9 years and 4 months in jail. Stephen Graham, 45, of Alston Gardens, Frockley, was sentenced to 8 years in jail. The sentencing of Simon Lancaster and has been deferred to a date to be fixed. A further associate, David Nixon, Monaghan's trusted lieutenant, was sentenced in 2021 to 15 years imprisonment for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, charges, and possessing prohibited firearms and ammunition. Nigel James, specialist prosecutor from the Crown Prosecution Service, said Monaghan was the driving force behind the criminal enterprise that flooded communities with dangerous drugs and had access to weapons that posed a serious threat to public safety. He used EncroChat prolifically to communicate with his associates in the mistaken belief that it offered anonymity. However, the messages allowed prosecutors to directly link Monaghan to the storage of the Class A drugs and firearms and demonstrate him controlling the day-to-day running of this criminal business. International cooperation was also a key fact of this case, and the CPS lawyers and our extradition unit worked with the law enforcement agencies in Turkey, the UAE, and Oman to ensure that members of this criminal group returned to the UK to face charges, he said. This successful prosecution was possible through close working with Northumbria Police. He added, "We are pleased to have removed this dangerous criminal network from our streets and will be pursuing confiscation proceedings to remove any criminal assets from the group." Detective Chief Inspector Mark Michael of Northumbria Police said Monaghan spearheaded an illicit network which sought to profit from the trade of hundreds of kilos of destructive illegal substances. Monaghan thought he could leave the country and face zero consequences for his actions. However, there is no hiding place for drug dealers in the northeast and beyond, and along with his criminal associates, they are now facing substantial sentences behind bars. This was a complex investigation, and thanks to the tireless efforts of all involved, these conspirators were left with no choice but to plead guilty at court. Firearms and substances such as these cause untold damage to our communities, and I am delighted we have been able to remove dangerous offenders from our streets for a significant period of time, he added. Please like this video, please comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.